Welcome to Political Connections, everybody. I'm Yvette Brusoal. March is Women's History Month, and Central Florida has a rich tradition of women rising to the top of the political world. Trailblazers like Paula Hawkins, Toni Jennings, and Linda Chapin turning the good old boys political network into a new frontier for women who wanted to make a change in politics. One such woman was the mayor of Orlando for 11 years and then moved up to Tallahassee for a role in Governor Jeb Bush's cabinet. Political Connections' Eric Mock sits down with this week's special guest, Glenda Hood.
Glenda, thank you so much for sitting down with us, taking some time today to talk about women in politics, which you know a lot about, having so much experience, right?
Well, I spent 25 years in politics, and so, yes, I had some great experiences, and I'm hoping now that some of those experiences can be shared with others so that we can encourage more and more women to get involved.
Tell us what you're doing right now.
Well, I chair a local bank board, Axiom Bank, and been on that board for a number of years. And then I also sit on some other corporate boards, so I'm able to use a lot of the skill sets and experiences and knowledge that I learned over the years in the corporate world again. I had my small business early on before I got involved in politics, and now I've gone back into business. So being able to serve on the bank board, serve on some other corporate boards, and then also do a lot of work with the Urban Land Institute around the country, working on development projects, transportation challenges, things like that.
So again, you're not slowing down at all after
Not at all, not at all. And it's great because I get an opportunity to work with so many different people, to use the networks that I've established over the years, and to encourage more and more people to get involved in their communities and hopefully into politics.
First female mayor of Orlando.
Yes.
And only, if I'm
so far.
correct, right? So far. Yeah. At this point, right?
Hopefully there'll be another one before too long.
That's right. But I know you were on the district commission before that.
I was on city council. I was a city commissioner. I first ran in 1982 and was elected to 3 terms as city commissioner, and then had a lot of encouragement from the business community and the community in general to run for mayor, and then was elected to 3 terms as mayor. So local politics, being at the local level, is what I've always loved. And it was really, at that time, an extension of community service. I'd been involved in a lot of different organizations, volunteer organizations, business organizations at the local level, got to know my community, got to learn what some of the issues were, and felt that I could help address some of those. I was born and raised here in Orlando, so it was quite an honor and a little humbling to be elected first to city council and then as mayor in the community in which you grow up and the one that you love and where you want to raise your family and where you want to stay.
How did that feel? Like you said, because a lot of people we know here in Central Florida come from other places to live here.
Yes.
But you, born and raised here, how did that feel then to be the top job in the city where you were raised in?
Well, it felt great. And, you know, as much as you think you know your community, you really maybe don't know it as well as you thought you did. And I'll tell you a little story. My husband went through the Leadership Orlando program. He had his own business, president of his business, and he had an opportunity to go through Leadership Orlando. And he'd come home and he'd talk about all the things he was learning about a community in which he grew up also. And so I thought, well, I want to go to Leadership Orlando, and I want to learn. At the time, we had small children. I was doing a lot of volunteer work, but did not have a paying job at the time, although volunteer jobs are equally as important and, you know, equally everything as a paying job. And we tried to get that point across always. So I went to the people at the chamber and said I would like to apply for Leadership Orlando, and I was told that I couldn't because I didn't have a business or I wasn't involved with a business. And so I convinced, to make a long story short, the people at the chamber that being involved in a nonprofit organization, representing that organization, was equally as important. So I was really the first person through Leadership Orlando that represented a nonprofit organization. And so that was one of the first doors I was able to open. And learning about my community and really focusing on how a community plans for the future was what I learned through Leadership Orlando. And so I took all that knowledge and was appointed then by the then Mayor Carl Langford to the planning board of the City of Orlando. Learned more and more about planning and how a city operated. And so one thing led to another, continually learning, continually building that knowledge. And then I got the encouragement to run for City Council, and that's where I say it was kind of an extension of community service.
Yeah, that's what I've heard a lot of people say that about local politics. And now, like you said, you ran for City Council, and then, like you said, elected the mayor for 3 terms after that. What kind of barriers did you have to overcome to take that, pretty much the CEO job of a city, and a very fast-growing city, I'm sure, at that time as well as now. And what kind of barriers did you have to overcome being the first female mayor in a job that had always been given to men here, in the city?
Well, there were even challenges and barriers when I first ran for City Council. I mean, I walked door to door, house to house, introducing myself to people. And there were a lot of attitudes about women running for office, people feeling that that was not appropriate, or, you needed to stay home with your family, and you had no place in local government. Secondly, raising money was a little difficult. And so I had a lot of great people who helped me raise money. And I have to say they were men who helped me raise money, because we women at the time in the early 80s really weren't very good at that. So that was another challenge. But I think the attitudes were probably the biggest challenge. People just weren't used to women in politics. There had been very few women in this community who had gotten involved in politics, and so we really had to break through those barriers. When I ran for mayor, because I had been on City Council for a decade, people knew me. They knew what I stood for. They knew, what I represented, how I presented myself, and so I think that was of great benefit. But there were still those attitudes out there about women in government in general. And I know our city clerk used to tell the story about, a gentleman calling with a complaint, and he didn't want to talk to her, but transferred the call to the city commissioner, who happened to be a woman, and he didn't want to talk to her. And he finally demanded to talk to the mayor. And when he learned what the mayor's name was, and that it was another her, he couldn't quite grasp that. So, I tell that as a joke in a way, but those attitudes, I believe, still prevail out there somewhat. I think we've made great strides. I think we've encouraged more women, but I think often even we women forget to support and to pull other women up that ladder of success with us, because we've had to work so hard to gain those leadership positions that sometimes we forget to pull others along with us and to mentor them along that journey.
That's a good point, like you're saying. And you said you believe sometimes those attitudes still prevail today. You kind of stepping back now out of the politics sphere, as you've done, now looking as like an outside perspective, what do you kind of see of the current landscape in politics, local, state, and even national, if you want to talk about that, as far as women being involved?
Yeah. Well, as I said, I think there fortunately are more and more women involved, and that's a good thing. But I do think that it's still harder for women often to break through some of those barriers and to overcome some of those challenges that are out there. If they're established and people know them, it's a little easier, but when someone who doesn't have some of that experience or isn't as well known tries to break through, there are often labels put on people. And talking about labels, I think that's part of the attitude that's out there. If a woman is firm and strong, she has a label put on her. If a woman is more thoughtful and softer in her leadership style, she has a label put on her. And so those are some of the things that we need to work through and we need to talk about. And I think often people don't even realize that they're putting these labels on individuals. We do that very much so now, with political labels as far as party affiliation, or just there's so much anger out there, and so much not wanting to get along and being critical of people. And I hate to see that, because we're all looking for the same end game. We all have the same goals. We all want to make our communities better. We want to make our states better. We want to make our country better. We want to make sure that everyone has opportunities and are treated equally. And if we're not focused on that, then shame on us. We're not doing a good job.
All right, please stay with us. More with former Orlando Mayor Glenda Hood coming up after the break, right here on Political Connections. We'll be right back.